Hello, everyone. Welcome to our horse talk today. I'm really excited to have my favorite astrologer, Anne Ortlee, joining us. We talk a lot about the year of the horse, the year of the fire horse, and we know it's an exciting year for us as advocates. But I thought it would be great to have an astrologer come and talk to us a little bit about what it means astrologically, what we can be looking for, what our best options are for getting legislation or other things passed. And so I'm going to turn it over to Anne. As usual, everyone is muted and your videos are off. If you have questions, please put them in the chat, and we'll answer them either as we go along or when we stop and pause for questions. So thank you again, Anne, for doing this. I really appreciate it. And thank you everyone for being here.
Yep. Hi. Ready to go? Hi, everybody. I'm Anne Ortlee. I'm an astrologer in New York and Florida. I kind of go back and forth. And so what we're going to talk about today is the year of the horse, and more specifically, the year of the fire horse, and also the new moon eclipse that we had that initiated the year, which happened on February 17th, and also initiated Lent and Ramadan. So a lot of the religious holidays. Ash Wednesday was right after the eclipse, and this is the Chinese New Year. So when I was talking to Chris before, she said, really, somebody said, really, astrology? So I'm going to talk to you about why we're going to look at astrology, because it does talk to us about the energy that we're going to be working with and how we can use it effectively. So we're going to talk about that, and then we're going to talk about the new moon eclipse, which brings things to light and is very exciting that we're going to be working with. And then we're having all this transition, which all of you can feel energetically, whether you know it or not. Think of all the things that you've let go of over this last year, because we were in the year of the wood snake, and the wood snake sheds its skin and sheds its life. So think of the things you've shedded since February, the year, all last year since February 17th. And now what are we bringing in? Because we're moving into that fire horse energy. Additionally, one of the things that's happening against the backdrop of the world is we're having the planets shift out of earth and water, where they've been for the last 35 years, and they're shifting into air and fire. So think of earth and water. You guys live in land where land is really big. Earth is solid, reliable, dependable. Water, so necessary to make things grow in the earth, very fertile. But we're leaving that behind, and we're shifting now into 35 years of air and fire. Air is ideas, thoughts, concepts, the way we look at things, and think of air blowing across the plains or the gusts of wind, like now with winter. I'm in Florida, that's why I'm wearing a sleeveless shirt. You guys are, I guess, warm. It's 40 degrees there, so it's good. And then fire, which is that visionary energy. And think of fire in terms of matches. You light a match to see the darkness. You have a fireplace fire, or you have candles by fire. Now, this particular year of the horse represents a fiery year, and it's in fireplace energy. So what it's going to do is going to fix energy for us. It's going to set up energy for the next 12 years. So it's very important when you're working on legislation or you're working in your communities to say, well, what's my vision, Neptune? What is the vision I have that the reality train, Saturn, is going to run on? Because Neptune and Saturn are meeting up, and they're meeting up at 0 Aries, which is a new point. It's initiating. Think of spring when the sun comes across the equator and you get that breath of fresh air. We're starting a new 35-year cycle 2 days after we had the year of the horse gallop in. So we look at astrology. Horos is hour, Scopus is picture, but also the backdrop of the world is shifting. So if you've ever been to a show and the curtains are pulled and the characters come in front and do a scene, and when the curtains open, the entire backdrop has changed. That's what's happening to all of us all over the world, because this is a universal aspect for everybody. So we're back to that initiating energy of matches being struck, because Saturn and Neptune are in the sign of matches, Aries. And then the year of the horse, Jupiter, which is the planet that's going to be galloping, is going to be galloping through the sign of Leo, the fireplace. So we have these two kind of working energies. Of course, fireplace fires get lit by matches. So we're going to work with that. And then what happens with eclipses, we have eclipses that happen a couple times a year. And what they do is they kind of write our direction. There's things in the sky called nodes of fate. Everybody has them in their chart. And the node of fate encourages us to go in a certain direction. And what happens when we have eclipses is they meet, the sun gets near the north node of fate, and we get redirected. So that's what we're having. We're getting redirected in new ways for the next 35 years. So the work you've been doing since 88, 89 around Earth matters. Now we're going into vision and fire matters. And so it's very important to have a clear vision, and this is in your own life, but as well as in your legislation for the horses. So in your own life, what's your vision? Think about what you were doing in 88, 89. In the world, it was a big year. It was Tiananmen Square. That was also when the Berlin Wall collapsed like immediately. That time, the world, the conjunction that Saturn and Neptune had was in Capricorn, the sign of walls. This time, the conjunction's in Matches, the sign of fire, right? So the Berlin Wall collapsed, Europe and reunited. And then what happened? The USSR collapsed, right? And some people went east and some people went west. Some stayed with Russia. Some went to the EU and joined the NATO, tried to join NATO. And so we're having something very similar happen now this year. So we're looking at the world order changing, but in your own life, you're having this aspect happen somewhere in your chart, and it's saying to you, what is your vision for the structures you want to build over the next 35 years, specifically this next 2.5? So it's laying it. So when I was talking with Chris, she was talking about the legislation that got passed around helping horses. And so we're back, we're in the year of the horse. So we're going to be looking at legislation around horses, but also, talking and thinking about what horses are. So when we look at the aspects here, I went to a wedding this weekend where it was a bride and groom getting married on the year of the fire horse. And they had this beautiful carousel horse covered with roses. And you can see it's galloping there. And that was the centerpiece for the wedding. And of course, on the Chinese New Year, you get 8 courses. So they didn't want flowers on the table because, got to put the food there. But they had this beautiful horse in the middle of the place where we had the reception hall where we had the meal. So we're looking at a fire horse in 2026. And Chinese New Year is similar to our New Year, the one we do on January 1st. But this one is tied to that lunation that happens. So when we're looking at a fire horse year, there are 5 different elements in the Chinese system, fire being one of them. And then there are 12 different animals. Most of them are real animals. There's one called the dragon, which is not real. But one of my friends, Monica Domino, lived in Central America, and she said, I live with every animal. And so think of horses as an animal in terms of who they are and where they're going to go. And so there's 5 elements. So every 5 times 12 this happens every 60 years that we have a fire horse year, because they're going to be in different, like I'm a wood horse. There's metal horses, but this is a fire horse. So the last time we had a fire horse year was 1966. So those of you who are a little older know what was going on then. We were having the protests for the Vietnam War. We were having the civil rights movement, the women's movement, the gay movement. We were taking the culture and the society and the structures and saying, hey, we need to transform it. We need to change it. The one before that was in 1906, was a fire horse year. And of course, that's when the California earthquake happened and San Francisco burned to the ground. So that's the bad part about fire. We're going to have a very fiery summer, very hot and fiery. Right now, we're in a water time. So we've had a lot of snow. We got friends who sent a picture right before I got on. She's standing here in the snowbanks behind her. So I wrote, did you shrink? Because there's so much snow on Nantucket. So right now we're in water, but this summer we're going to be in a lot of fire. So think of what horses do. and how big they are and how they, in the old days, not so much now, we use them to travel. We use them for transportation. We use them to travel around with. They did work. They helped us get things. They pulled the stagecoach. And when cars were invented back in the 1900s, 1904, Henry Ford said, well, we're going to call it horsepower. This has got the power of four horses, which was the way they used to refer to how cars traveled. But when we're looking at a horse energy, we're looking at the energy. Think of what a horse is like. Your image of the horse galloping across the plains. It's about freedom. It's about energy and transformation. They travel, they change. Horses are very bold. If you've ever talked to a horse or hung out with a horse, it's got a little charisma and they're big and they're kind of like, hey, you're going to give me a carrot? When I was a kid, we used to stop by this horse place on the way home from church, and we would always bring carrots and apples to give, and the horses would come over and they'd be like, hi. So there was a lot of energy of charisma. Also, horses are about drive, horsepower in the cars, horses galloping, and they're fused with independence. So when we're looking at a fire horse year, this is the energy we're going to be working with, right? They can be unpredictable. I had a friend who had horses, and these horses were pretty frisky, and we were coming back, and the horse was like bumping me, and I'm like, is it gonna get me? And he was like, no, it's just trying to be friendly. But I was kind of like a little, he was kind of like poking at me, made me a little nervous. They're very individual. They're also unafraid to challenge norms. Horse people in general. So if you're born in the year of the horse, which would be this year, but to go back every 12 years is a year of a horse. They also tend to be leaders, rebels, and pioneers. Think of the going across this country, the pioneers riding horses, doing wagon trains pulled by horses, and carrying us to new places. They also were trailblazers. If you've ever ridden on a trail with a horse, they kind of know where they're going. Back when I rode horses more as a kid, the horse kind of knew, and they always go home, right? They always know how to get home. If you watched the Super Bowl ad this year, there was a great year of the horse. This little baby Clydesdale helping this little baby eagle. It was a true story. One of my clients said it's AI. I said, no, this is true. So that Clydesdale came. If you didn't go watch the ad, it's really cute. The Clydesdale stands over the baby horse or the baby eagle, and then the baby eagle learns how to fly by riding on the back of the horse. And then the last shot is the Clydesdale fully formed, galloping, leaping over a fence. And as he leaps, the eagle takes off from his back. That image of Pegasus. I mean, the first time I saw that commercial, I burst into tears. And every time I watch it afterwards, I still cry. So it's a very cool, but that idea of being a trailblazer and creating new paths and being visionary, refusing to be bound by convention. Also charismatic. Horses are very charming, and also ambitious. They have a feeling about how they want to do. Now, when I first learned astrology, back when I was a baby astrologer, there was an article in that they were banning MRIs or sonograms in Korea because they were going to abort the girl horses. Because being a girl and being born as a horse, which I am, makes you unpredictable, uncontrollable. You like your solitude, you like to do your own thing, and you're not really a quote unquote compliant female. So I kind of thought, well, that's kind of mean that they're aborting girl babies. But when they're looking at a girl as a horse, they're like, yeah, they're hard to marry. They don't follow the rules. They do their own thing. So people born in the year of the horse have that energy, particularly people born in fire horse years, very assertive, very aggressive. I'm an earth horse, so I'm about making my way in the world and doing physical things. So you're going to look at what your energy is. And whatever animal you are, you should look up your chart on the Chinese calendar, and they will say to you, what are you? So I'm a rooster. So I talk a lot and I crow, and I'm a horse. And so your day, time, place of birth, in the same way you have an astrology chart with, rising and ascendant and sun and moon in Western astrology, you also have a Chinese chart, which says what animal you're like. So if you're a monkey or if you're a dog or if you're a goat or you're an ox, you have different energy based on those animals. And each Jupiter, which is every 12 years, the Jupiter repeats, has an energy of that kind of person. So if you're born in the year of the sheep, you're born in the year of the dog, you have different energy than you would if you're a horse. So you can look it up on the internet. It's very cool. I definitely recommend you do it. And your date, time, place of birth. But even if you just have the date and the time, you can find out what animal you are and how they interact. So when we're looking at a fire horse, what it's going to do, because there's yin and yang. Yin is the feminine energy, yang is the outgoing, go, go, go. So yang energy's got a masculine component to it, and fire has a masculine component to it in the sense that it spreads, it moves around. Earth and water are yin. They sit, they wait, they receive. But the fiery energy kind of pushes us forward. So this pairing amplifies intensity, speed, and transformation. So we're going to be working a lot, very intense year ahead. So when you're doing your legislation, Chris had said, one part you're going to pass and then we're going to go work on the other part because the goal is to get it done, to get it out there, get it moving forward. So it's a very intense year with a lot of speed, a lot of transformation that we're going to be working with. And we also have Elsie arriving. Hi, Elsie. We also are in fire horse years. We are in a period that demands clarity. More importantly, it demands self-regulation and intentional action, right? Think of horses. When I was younger, I was in an NIT basketball game the year after I got out of college. My college won the NITs. We're down at Madison Square Garden. We're partying in the street, all excited. A bunch of 19, I was 21, whatever I was. I'd moved to New York that year. And I had like 20 people sleeping on my floor for the basketball game. And we're standing there partying. Yay, our team won. And the guys come out on horses. The police come out on horses. And I'm standing there and this horse is backing into me. And I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. And the guy's like, move. The horse is going to keep going. And it's like this big horse butt, and I'm like, oh. So I was like, okay, he had intentional action that he was getting the streets cleared. And that whole energy of clarity and self-regulation and intentional action is asked of each of us in this year. Now, it's also a year of initiation. So you're all going to be coming up with your new vision for the structures you're going to build for the next 35 years. So it's very important to go with this idea of taking action positively. This year also does not support passive approaches to health. I need you to be proactive and invest in preventive therapy because it is so fiery. It's going to be very hard on the body, on our bodies, because it's a lot of energy, but also getting structured routines and being proactive about your own self-awareness and how you take action. It's not a year for hanging around and waiting to be asked. It's a year for saying, let me gallop into it. Fire horse years also expose imbalance very quickly. So you can have burnout. You can have some nervous system dysregulation, anxiety attacks, stuff like that. And of course, the heart is the fire of our body. It runs our body, that little heart beating every 60 beats a minute. That cardiovascular strain, if unmanaged, right? So the idea is focusing physically on your own health, but also recognizing because we're going to be galloping full out, being aware of how we work that energy in a different way. So well-being, physical well-being, because I was talking to Chris about what kinds of stuff to cover with you. I thought I'd bring this up because we all have to kind of pay attention to our own beings and bodies this year too. So it's about maintaining balance, doing a high yang year. A lot of fire, a lot of passion. It requires intentional regulation. Do not suppress. If you suppress, it gets a little wild. The goal is to stabilize the fire energy, the yang energy, into a steady, life-giving flame. Remember, we're going for a fireplace. Matches light, they go off. Fireplace, sustained fire over time. So you have to be conscious of how do I sustain my fire? And you've ever sat with trying a fireplace, you put a log on it, and then it starts to get a little, and you poke it a little with the poker, and then you maybe put another log on. So it's understanding you doing your regulation, ongoing regulation in sustaining and stabilizing. From your nervous system, because fire is very fast, speedy, excited, right? Nervous system regulation through therapy, through breath work and acupuncture. You can do cardiovascular and circulatory support through movement without overexertion. You need to move during a fire horse year. You need to move during a horse year. Horses need to move, or if they don't, they're very cranky. So think of the horse needing its workout, needing its walk, living and galloping on the horse on the plains, allow regular exertion and movement. Also, digestive clarity to support nutrient assimilation and reduce inflammatory overload. Going to be very prone to inflammation this year because fire is inflammatory. So being aware of what foods inflame your nervous system, particularly alcohol, sugar, things like that, and just being conscious of when I eat those that I feel a little inflamed. Also, doing emotional processing to prevent stagnation or emotional suppression. Now, what we've noticed over the last bits, everybody's angry, right? And mad and fighting and yelling. And so, not to say fight and yell, but to be clear and conscious about what you're communicating, how you're communicating, because that's also part of the fire horse year energy. That we can't suppress our emotions. We need to bring them out into the world. If we suppress them, what it's going to do is it's going to make our nervous system nervous. We're going to have some problems. Also, consistent sleep rhythms that align with circadian biology, meaning sun goes down, you're going to bed. Sun rises, you get up. Now, obviously, we can't always go to bed at 6 o'clock at night, but being conscious about how you're taking care of your physical vehicle, but also to balance the energy in a fire horse year, how you work with that. Currently, Jupiter is in the sign of Cancer, which is water. So that's why we're having so much water, water everywhere. Cancer rules fresh water. So that's all the snow. When we get to June 30th, Jupiter is going to enter Leo, which is the sign of fireplace fire. And it's going to be in that sign for a year until next July 24th of 2027, when it goes into Virgo. And every 12 years, Jupiter goes galloping through Leo. So think back what you were doing 12 years ago in 2014. Think what you were doing back 12 years ago in 2002. Think what you were doing back in 1990. Think what you were doing back in 1978. Each of those years were years when we were galloping forward and starting a new 12-year cycle. What's going to happen? Jupiter is this little guy down here at the bottom. What happens with him is there are 30 degrees in a sign. And again, you guys don't know astrology, but we'll just kind of talk about it. So imagine all the planets run between 0 and 30. You can see the numbers here. This is 1, this is 3, this is 8, this is 26. They all have numbers somewhere between, depending on where they are in what sign in the zodiac and the heavens above. When Jupiter enters Leo, he is going to gallop from June 30th through December 18th. He's going to gallop forward and he's going to go as high as 27. Now remember, there's only 30 degrees in a sign. What that means is he's going to gallop through 0 to 27 degrees, and he's going to wake up everything in your astrology chart between 0 and 27. And then he goes, I woke you up. I planted the seeds. There's little fires burning all through your chart about what you're going to do for the next 12 years, how you're going to harness this intentional, creative yang energy and build lasting fireplaces, not run and done, but ones that last and sustain. That makes it an excellent year for legislation that lives, that grows, that helps things become better. So with Jupiter galloping through those, he's going to wake that up. And last time he galloped through it was 12 years. Go back and think in 12-year increments, because somewhere in your chart, which is your master plan, your computer program, whatever you want to call it, your purpose for being here on Earth, Jupiter initiated a 12-year cycle that he's going to start another 12-year cycle this June. So that's big. And he's in fire. Remember, I said everything's moving out of earth and water into fire and air. He was in earth when the Berlin Wall fell down. And he was like, oh, let's break the wall apart. And poof, it was gone. So he's in fire. Now, this does bode badly for high drought and fires, unfortunately. And of course, we did have the California 1906, where San Francisco burned to the ground in the earthquake. So hopefully we're not going to have that version, but you want to be aware of how fire spreads and how dramatic it is. We all saw it last year in January when California was on fire. We saw it earlier, a little earlier before that, when Maui burned. And the fire goes up the hill, right? It gallops up the hill. It doesn't come down. It goes galloping up the hill. So the energy is very intense with this fire energy. The other thing that's happening is Saturn and Neptune are going into Aries, the sign of matches, initiating energy. And they're back. Saturn is back where he was in 1997 and 98. And think of the energy that initiated in your life back then, because you started a new 29-year cycle. And that cycle's coming to an end now in 97 and 98, that cycle that began coming to an end. We're going to start another one. That also was an economic collapse year. That was when the dot-coms fell. So we can anticipate some economic changes, major changes coming and happening. Neptune, the last time he was in Aries was 165 years ago. And that was the beginning of the Civil War. And that was based on the Dred Scott decision about a slave being, was he going to be free or was he going to stay a slave? And his master had died in a slave state. And so they ruled that he had to stay a slave, even though he had said to the slave, I'll set you free. Once he was dead, the wife said, no, I'm not setting you free. So they sued, the slaves sued, and they lost. And that led to the beginning of the Civil War, the firing at Fort Sumter. What the vision is for the country. Was it going to be slave and free, or was it going to be free? And so that vision is very important. We're having that again. So when we had the shooting in Minneapolis, that was when Neptune went into Aries for the first time in 165 years. And Bruce Springsteen wrote his song, The Streets of Minneapolis, the winter of 2026. I don't know if you've seen that song, but the shooting happened, he wrote the song, he published it and released it on Sunday. The shooting was Saturday. So the energy of new ideas, the new vision, what's the vision that we have for ourselves, our country, our purpose, our world? Now, this is happening all over the world. It's not just us. In the same way that the one that happened in 88, 89 was all over the world, not just us. And the one that happened in 1914, the Great Wars, the World Wars, all over the world, not just us. So these are very big, momentous energies. Now, part of your job as a human is you're born to live through this time. And you have a passion. One of your passions are horses. So you have a vision of, okay, I need to take care of this. This is the vision I have. And we're all casting our vision, our dream, our idea forward for the next 35 years, the same way that you maybe didn't think about back in 88, 89. You were casting a vision, but you were. In my case, that's when I started my computer consulting business. I'd been working in corporate and I went, I think it's time to go do my own thing. And so I started selling software to businesses. And so you watch your life unfold. So think about what you were doing in 88, 89, how that's shifted. And now what's your vision for this next chapter? Now, in addition to all these changes that we're having, the North Node, as I mentioned last year, was in January of 25. We saw California on fire, and that was the initiating of a new 19-year cycle, right? Where we started a new cycle. The nodes take 19 years to go around the chart, the same way the sun goes around the chart in the course of a year, and the moon goes around the chart every month. We also had Saturn go into Aries. The last time it was there, as I said, was in April of 1996, 97, that time frame. Neptune went into Aries. The last time it was there in April of 61, and it's going to be in Aries until 2039. So the next 14 years, Neptune is in the sign of the vision that we hold for our life and our world. So you want to really focus on your vision. Neptune and Saturn danced with each other last year, and they just got married a couple days ago. They got married on February 20th to start a new 35-year cycle, like they did back in 88, 89, when they danced together in Capricorn. When we look at the nodes, planets are changing. So Neptune is our vision, our dream, our idea. It rules the ocean. Think of the vastness of it. Neptune rules movies, our passions, the things that we're invested in because we believe in them. What is it you believe in? And why do you believe in it? Why are you into horses? What inspired, because Neptune's where we're inspired. What inspired you to do horses? What inspired you to do legislation, to go to Saturn, the authorities, the structure, the thing that rules the government, and say to Saturn, hey, I have a vision that we need to put in place to save my impassioned and wonderful horses. Government, can you help me? Can you help me structure this? So that's one of the big jobs. The other thing that's happening is Pluto went into Aquarius. Aquarius is the air sign. It's the sign of the community, the collective. In our growing season, it's the time of February. So we've finished all of our growth on the farm. We've done all our work. We've gotten ready for the new growing season. And we go out and we help our other people. We go out and help our community. We go out and we say, hey, what's going on with my groups, with my people, with my children of other people, with my collaboration where I want to hang out. So the last time Pluto was in Aquarius was in 1777, which was the beginning of the American Revolutionary War. The time before that, interestingly, was the Protestant Reformation. And that was when England and France got together and they said to the Catholic Church, you guys are selling these things called indulgences that people can go and sin. And then if they give you enough money, you forgive them. That doesn't seem right to me. Pluto in Aquarius now is back. It was against the rule of kings, saying, don't rule me, don't tell me what to do. And then, of course, a little later was the French Revolution, where they cut off the rich people's heads because they said, are you helping the community or not? And if you're not, Pluto in Aquarius is also your dream about a greater world. Now, he's going to be in Aquarius for 20 years. So he is saying to you, I am in the sign of visioning and ideas for the greater good of the community and the collective. What is it? What does the community and the collective need? And why? And where do we work with them? And so that energy with air, the ideas, the vision, the thoughts. So he's talking in this bigger picture. And again, it's a big cycle. Now, none of us have lived through it. So when you go on the internet and you read stuff, they go, oh, Pluto in Aquarius, oh my God, we're all going to die. Go, no, we're not. Everybody lives. We're good. We're going to be taking more care of our community. We're going to be looking at our community and we're going to be saying, hey, our community needs to be this. And your community is whatever your community is. You guys are horse people. Great. That's your community. What are the communities that you're in, that you're going to be working in and helping transform as we go into this year of the fire horse? We have a vision, and the vision is for the group, for the idea that we have. Air is about ideas. Neptune in Aries, I said we talked a little bit about this. It was last there in April of 61 when Fort Sumter it just happened a couple days ago. It went in a little bit last summer, but then it really got in good on February 13th, and it's going to be there for 14 years. So it's saying, what's your vision for the next 14 years? What is it you're inspired by? What inflames your soul, inflames your passion? Where do you want to light a match and spark things and make them go forward? Very big visioning time. Now, Neptune is finishing a 14-year journey in Pisces, the sign before Aries. The last time it was there was the California gold rush. The equivalent this time is Bitcoin. So if you're in Bitcoin, you maybe want to cash out a little bit, take some money off the table because we're going into Aries. And we know the California gold rush and the Alaska gold rush got a lot of people out there, but not that many people made money, except Levi Strauss, who sold blue jeans. But the idea is, what's the vision you're going for? Because we are going to have some Neptunian things that are dissolving in visionary and ideas. They're going to come into crystallizing and a match. And if you remember from World Wars, they said 3 on a match is unlucky. You light the cigarette with 1 match, but if you light 3 cigarettes, it gets the sniper time to know where to shoot. So that's the other energy is light. If you ever sat in the dark and light a match. And again, the imagery, sitting in the dark, you light the match and then it burns out. It's quick, it's fast. But this is matches for 14 years, visions for 14 years. Again, these are big cycles, but the whole world is going to have a new vision of what they want to do. Now, the last time that Neptune and Saturn, because he's here, he went in May of 2025, and the last time he was there, as I mentioned, was 96. But the last time the two of them met up at 0 Aries was 7,000 before Common Era, 9,000 years ago. And that was when we went from the fertility goddesses to the Bronze Age. And the fertility goddesses were, you just get naked in the field and you make the babies and everything happy. The Bronze Age was, my sperm made that baby and I own you. And Mars, the energy of the sword and being able to make a sword and come and take your stuff. So it was kind of the beginning of patriarchy. So now we're back at that energy again. And we're looking at the patriarchy and the Aries, like I run things, Neptune, Saturn, 0 Aries, and saying, really, you run things, huh? Let's see how that works. And so we're needing a new vision because we're back at that degree 9,000 years ago. These are very big transitional times. So it's very important for you to have a good vision of the work you want to do. Vision is Neptune, Saturn's the work. That's my vision. Now, Jupiter right now is in Cancer. Last time it was there was June of 13. This summer, Leo's going into Leo. The last time it was there was July of 14. And the node of fate went into Aries here. The last time it was there was 19 years ago. And it's saying new big cycles. So all these planets in fire and air are starting a new cycle of vision and ideas that is going to run 35 years, 20 years, 29 years, 8 years, 12 years, 19 years, 14 years. So all these planets are in these signs initiating visionary energy. When we look at them in a chart, they look like this. Kind of doesn't look that big, right? It's air, but they all are in these little blue cooperative energies. They want to work together. And they're all saying, hey, let's partner with each other and create something over in this corner of our world. This is the energy I want to go towards, that I want to create things with. So there's a nice energy here of wanting to partner with new ideas or with ideas that you've had and bringing them out into the world for other people to accept them, to take them, to say, that sounds great. Now, what happened with this coming into the fire year, and it doesn't happen but once every 19 years, we had a new moon eclipse as well as the new moon, because the Chinese New Year starts on the new moon. But in this particular one, we had a solar eclipse on top of it, which is a big deal. Solar eclipses have a lot of energy around our direction in life and where we're headed, because again, the nodes of fate want us to be on our right path. And when we have an eclipse, the sun and the moon are aligned with the nodes of fate, and they say, this is the fated direction. You should go this way. So this is a big deal to have this year of the horse with all this fiery new energy happening on an eclipse at the same time, happening on the nodes of fate. So when we look at Aquarius, Aquarius is the sign of the water bearer. He shares the water with other people. He allows us to drink water. Think of how important water is, even though he's an air sign. So this is the constellation in the heavens. It also is the sign of balloons. So the idea of balloons, and we just had the El Paso get shut down because of the balloons that they were firing at the airspace over El Paso. But it's also an air sign. So it's balloons or air, kites or air, as planets fly in the sky. We have it run by the planet Uranus. Now, Uranus was a weird little guy. He got discovered in 1777 because up until then, they didn't have telescopes. And once he got discovered, he was running erratically. He goes in a weird way. He's kind of a little odd, but he also represented freedom and new ideas and changes and new thoughts about things. And he was part of well, I don't want to, why do you have a divine right to be a king? Prince Charles is considered divine because he's got a divine right of kings as handed down over legacy. And we all went, yeah, you might be divine, but I don't think I want a king back in 1776, 77. Now, Uranus, because he's the planet of change, he's also the planet of divorce and breakups and new ideas. He takes 84 years to go around the circle. The last time, as I mentioned before, he was in Gemini 84 years ago was June of 41. None of us alive have lived through him. None of us have lived through Neptune and Aries. None of us have lived through Pluto and Aquarius. So we have three signs that none of us have lived through unless you're over 84 years old. So Uranus in Gemini is about ideas breaking forth, giving us a new vision. So he can be very happy in Gemini, and he is in his rulership in Aquarius, which is where the new moon was in Aquarius. He also is exalted in Scorpio. He likes to blow things up, very happy. Not happy about Leo because he's kind of like personally a little obnoxious, basically, and he's not happy in Taurus, where he's been for the last 8 years. So the last 8 years, the balloon has been bump, 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 kind of bouncing along the bottom of the ground. When we get to the end of April, Uranus is going to go into air, Gemini, and suddenly be full of all sorts of new ideas. Again, as part of this transformation that we're going through as a collective. None of us have lived through Uranus and Gemini unless we're over 84. If you watched the State of the Union last night, they had a couple of the old soldiers who were like 100 years old who fought in the World War II. Those people are all leaving now. We are now the shareholders of the ideals that we want to work for. Uranus was in Gemini when we split up as a country during the Civil War. Brother against brother, Geminis as siblings. Uranus was in Gemini when we declared independence from the kings. Uranus was in Gemini when we had the French Revolution. So this next 8 years promise to be a lot of breakups, makeups, new ideas, visionary. Now, when things break up, there's an opportunity to run in the middle there and get in there and pass your legislation and say, hey, I got this great idea. Let's get it done. So Chris and I were talking before you guys came on, and she said, well, I want to get the legislation passed here because then we can go get it over there. Like part one, part two, you have a strategy. Gemini is the con artist, right? So if you've ever been pickpocketed, one time I was on the bus in New York, and there was this weird thing going on by the exit. There's a door in the back of the bus, right? And this one guy was there, and he was like, and then there was a little old guy, and then behind him was another guy. And then suddenly it was like done, and the guy got off the bus. I'm kind of watching it. It's like weird. What's going on? And the bus driver starts to yell at me, and he goes, why didn't you take a picture of them? And I'm like, what? Because I have my camera with me. That was a pickpocket. And I went, oh. So I turned and I looked, and there's the two guys walking off with the old man's wallet. The old man's going that way, and the guys with the. So Uranus in Gemini has a pickpocket quality, a quality of distraction. It says, hey, look over here, look over here. And you go, yeah, what's going on over there? And in the meantime, your pocket gets picked. So with Gemini, you want to be watching. You want to go, there's a distraction. So what's happening over here? Something's going on over here. Because that energy of let me distract you with this bright, shiny object No, pay attention over here because this is where the story is. So when Chris was saying, I'm going to get the one and then I'm going to fight for it in the other, that's the idea. Break it into pieces, dive through the middle, have your vision, because if you have your vision, Neptune, Saturn, of what you want to do, you're going to use this energy when the little pickpocket comes and say, yeah, 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 no. So when we were talking before, she said, if the federal lands go to the states, we have less control. If they take the federal lands and they give them over to private industry, we have less control. What's that going to do to the horses? Again, you have a vision. You're here to help the horses, but also in your own life, where is the pickpocket happening? Where is there distraction to get you paying over here when you should be over here? Now, the nice part about the chart that you saw here is these guys are all talking to each other. So Uranus here is going to hear, hey, hey, watch over there. So you want to pay attention to when someone says, hey, watch there, because there's stuff over here. This energy works collaboratively together to help us get things accomplished. Also, the last 8 years, Uranus has been in a sign he hasn't liked very much because he doesn't like being on the ground. He is taking off the end of April and he is going to go very fast. And then he's going to spend 8 years full of new ideas to get things done. So getting ready for those new ideas is important. Uranus is often involved with breakthroughs, break aparts, break into new ways of looking at things and trying new things. When we look at this new moon, it also has the 30-day cycle, but it also has a longer cycle that's tied to the human gestation period. As you know, women's menstrual cycles, when they're off birth control, track with their lunar phase. Obviously, pharmaceuticals can impact when you menstruate, but if you are just living your chart's body, your body's doing its thing and making the blood every time it wants to, you're going to have a regularity of it that's tied to the lunation cycle, 27 and a half days. So if you got pregnant on February 17th, you will be having a Scorpio baby on November 17th, because that's when the moon is the same basic degree. If you go back 19 years to February of 2007, and you go back 19 years to February of 88, and if you're old, you go back 19 years to February of 69, each of those years, the moon was at the same place. Every 19 years, the moon's at the same place, repeating the story. Things that you begin on this new moon under this fire horse year will unfold over a 2.5 year period where there's a new moon. Then there's a first quarter, which the moon will be in Aquarius and the sun will be in Scorpio. There's a full moon where it'll be in Leo in August of next year. It'll be in Leo and Aquarius. And then there's a closing quarter in May of 28, which is going to be Taurus and Aquarius. So these are bigger creative cycles. Like if you're working on bigger projects, this happens every month. So just know forward. And it is that mem for Halloween, or for not Halloween, for Valentine's Day. Have sex on Valentine's Day, and then you're going to have a Scorpio. So that energy of that phase family and how we create. And this is what the eclipse chart looks like. Now, you don't know astrology, but this is the focus. You can see how everything's all focused over here. And you can see the sun and the moon are meeting up in 28 Aquarius. The little symbols like that are Aquarius. Right on the angle at sunrise in Washington, D.C. So what we do is we watch these numbers because they're going to tell us where the story happens. So you can see this guy is here at 27, 28, and this guy here is at 27. So they're talking to each other. When the numbers are the same, they talk to each other. This chart also has these two planets working together because the numbers are the same. They're duets, they're partnering. So Vesta and Mars, how many of you have been making changes around your home and throwing away things or getting rid of stuff or maybe redecorating? Venus and Athena, how many of you have been thinking of a new strategy of what you want to do, what you're really passionate about? Here's our little Saturn Neptune guys meeting up at 0 Aries. This is that new 35-year cycle I was talking about. And then these three guys are hanging out. They're a triplet. How many of you have been thinking about what I've been wounded by in the past and how I don't want to get wounded by it anymore? That's what this eclipse is talking to us about. That's what this new fire horse is saying. How am I going to gallop forward into the world and claim my direction and say, yes, yes, I am. I'm ready to go forward and do this, be this, create this. This is where the eclipse takes place. So this is the hot spots. And obviously it's down in Antarctica. So over the next 6 months, we can expect to hear a lot of news about Antarctica. And that little red part is where it's total. Eclipses happen anywhere in the world. When we had the eclipse in 17, it was up here in Washington State, and it came all the way across the country to South Carolina. And that was the eclipse that COVID came in on, because they run for a few years. The eclipse this summer, when we had the eclipse, went, there was another eclipse that went this way and went over Kerwood, Texas. That's where those little girls got swept away in the water. There was a big X there where the two eclipses crossed paths. So we watched the place where the eclipse lands to see where it's going to activate. This particular eclipse got a lot of Africa and South Africa. So each eclipse has a picture, has a story. So these are the images that are tied to this year of the fire horse. So when we're looking at your own life and you're going to go through your life and think about, gee, what am I called to? What are the ideals that are happening? So each degree in a chart has a meaning or a picture that's associated with it. So these are the images that are associated with the year of the horse. So when you're galloping forward this year and you're setting stage for the next 2.5 years for the new moon or the next 19 years, because it is a new beginning, this is this energy. So the image for the sun and moon is a butterfly emerging from a chrysalis, hatching, energy of creativity, energy of illumination, energy of thinking of that caterpillar as he changes into a butterfly. And he doesn't know he's changing, but he is. So that's what we're all doing, is we're about to hatch into a whole new life. We've been going through the transformation these last few years. We've been releasing and ending and saying, that's done, that's done, that's done. And we've crawled into our little chrysalises and wrapped ourselves in the cocoon. And now we're emerging, and our wings are going to dry, and then we're going to fly. So this is the emergence of us. Now, these images also have a way to think about things. So the imagery of the fire horse year is a butterfly emerging from a chrysalis. And this is from Linda Hills. She's an Australian astrologer, and she writes stories about each of the images. So this is the image for the moon and the sun starting the fire horse year. This symbol depicts nothing less than a complete emergence into a new life and total transformation. It's facing a whole new beginning and an entirely new life from what it has previously known. The butterfly, after it struggles to emerge from its chrysalis, takes a moment to stretch its wings, orient itself. It's shrugged off the chrysalis and is free to take flight when the moment is right. Like an awakening, you may feel you're suddenly able to do something that truly reflects your inner self and what you've always wanted or meant to become. Things have been developing within you that reflect who you truly want to be. There will be need to take care with this great effort of birth and rebirth to ensure a smooth transition into another dimension of life. With this brand new start, you'll be able to realize many more of your talents and potentials, even the latent ones. What have you been storing up and learning, and what do you assess your life's purpose to be? There's likely to be an awakening to a whole new field of opportunity. This can be very exciting, although somewhat confusing and confronting. A cautious but hopeful attitude at first would help you to ease into it. There can be nervousness, a feeling of having to find one's feet. Might be a good idea to take a moment to adjust to any new developments before taking flight. There can be some pain involved in the birth of the new, but if one has faith in a new beginning, this is soon forgotten and life takes on a whole new meaning. Events often happen to us to help us come out of ourselves in a more meaningful and beautiful way. Seeing each event as an opportunity for rebirth can lead to new depths of life that you possibly only previously imagined. Imagine the beauty that is coming through in the birthing of these new wings and this new life. The key words are slow building of confidence, coming out into a fuller participation in the bigger picture, growing up and out, emerging from the dark, leaving yesterday behind, becoming more and more beautiful, finding one's feet or one's wings, metamorphosis, huge changes in the works, giving up struggling, the drama of new life unfolding. The caution is failing to allow the changes to be experienced, feeling like one will never arrive. It's a journey, not a destination. Struggling to emerge ahead of time, feeling confined, being tied to the past, and rushing, which leads to disorientation or injury. There's nothing in a caterpillar that tells you it's going to become a butterfly. The other images are equally important. And remember, this new moon was also the beginning of Lent and the beginning of Ramadan. Ramadan is a 40-day festival of fasting. Lent, of course, is Lenten observing prior to Easter arriving. And so it's in astrology, it's tied to Venus. Venus, of course, is what we love. And when she goes backwards in the sky, retrograde, you've heard of Mercury retrograde, Venus goes retrograde too. When she goes backwards for 40 days. And that's where Ramadan comes from, giving up the things you like and not eating till sunset, not eating between sunrise and sunset. And Lent. When I was a kid growing up, my father was like, this is our family Lenten resolve. One year we had to give up TV. One year we had to go to church every day. And then what is your Lenten resolve? So they all happened. Mardi Gras was the day of the eclipse at Fat Tuesday. Marty is fat. Marty is Mars. Gras is fat. So Fat Tuesday before we have the Lenten fast. So the image for Mercury, each of the planets has an image. The image for Mercury is an Easter promenade. The image for Venus is the race begins. A jockey spurs his horse to great speed. So the images for this fire horse year are very much about you guys spurring yourself to great speed and getting stuff up and going and running. The image for Mars and Aquarius is a big white dove, a message bearer. And again, watch for these images to happen in the world around you or in your own life. The image for Jupiter in Cancer is a man before a square with a manuscript scroll before him, our version of it. The image for Saturn in Aries is a woman has risen out of the ocean and a seal is embracing her. Again, look at the feminine imagery here that we have with this horse, year of the fire horse coming in. The image for Uranus and Taurus is a mature woman reawakened to love. The image for Neptune at 0 Aries, remember the two planets are married there. A woman has risen out of the ocean, a seal is embracing her. And this is important if we think back that the last time it was at 0 was the fertility goddesses going into the Bronze Age, right? So we're kind of like the feminine energy emerging. The image for Pluto in Aquarius is a council of ancestors. The image for Chiron in Aries is an open window and a net curtain blowing into a cornucopia. The image for Juno in Capricorn is a Union Jack flies from a British destroyer. The image for Athena, there's this goddess of wisdom and strategy, is a girl blowing a bugle. The image for Ceres in Aries is a Pugliese entering a ring. And also Saturn Neptune is tied to chivalry and the Knights of the Round Table. And are we chivalrous? Are we, going to do the proper thing and initiate and gallop forward? Because Aries has a lot of energy around how are we going to be chivalrous and take care of people? And what is it we take care of? And you guys taking care of the horses totally is like, what is my vision for how I can enter the ring and fight to win? But also, what is my chivalry purpose? Why am I looking at that? The image for Vesta in Aquarius is a big white dove, a message bearer. Remember, those two were close to each other. The image for Eris is a promise, reveals its inner and outer meanings. And we have this annual eclipse that happens once every 19 years at this degree. So think back to your Februarys of 2007, February of 88, February of 69, go back every 19 years to get the image that's activated. So we also have the Saturn-Neptune meeting 3 days after the eclipse, and that is at 0 Aries on what we call a world point. And that's the point where the sun goes above the equator and the days get a minute longer in the northern hemisphere, and we're heading towards summer. It also is an important point for initiating new ideas and new visions and new beginnings. And taking place as it does on this 0 point, you have this point somewhere in your chart. Everybody has 0 Aries somewhere. And that's a point of initiation that starts a whole new cycle for you in terms of your direction in life and your purpose. Now, some of you don't know astrology at all. Some of you might have a little bit of knowledge about it. You might have had your chart read or looked it up on the internet. But you have your natal chart, which happens when you were born and you took your first breath of life. Horo is hour, Scopus is picture. The hour that was the picture of the hour when you were born is what your chart is. So you go, oh, and you incarnate with the solar system at that moment. And what astrologers say is that's your natal purpose, why you're here. So I'm sure if we looked at your charts together as a group, we would see your combined interest in this community of creating and taking care of animals and wanting to work for the greater good of your community and of the things that you love. You also have your natal, that's your natal chart. You also have a kind of chart that's called your soul chart, Soul. So the idea is, and I was raised Catholic, you died and went to heaven, which I always thought sounded a little boring. Once I started studying astrology, it's like, oh, we have past lives. Well, that's kind of fun. Cool. That's interesting. So the idea is you have a soul and your current life is here to do your current life's work, but you also have a soul chart and you can go look at the soul chart, which is 0 Aries, when the North Node of Fate is at 0 Aries, which it was at last January 10th, 2005. We had the fires in California. I looked at those and I went, California's going to be on fire and all the rest of us will be too. We had Kamala going to NATO. We had Donald convicted of his 34 felonies. And then we had the inauguration and then we went forward. So this soul chart that we all have has planets at 0 Aries. Every country has a soul. Every document, including the Declaration, has a soul. Every person, your dog, your cat, your kids, your spouses, all have souls. And so the soul chart is what is the chart heart? What does it really want to do? And you can go on any software program and pull your soul's chart. It's called your draconic chart. And you can look at that and say, this is what my soul wants me to do. And then your natal chart, which is the one you're living right now, the node can be anywhere of one of 19, one of 100 and 360 other degrees besides 0 Aries. So we take your natal chart and we move it back to the node being at 0 Aries, which is what's happened for everybody in the world. That's why these transits are so big and it feels so unstable and ungrounded because all these planets are at 0 Aries, which is the sign of the match lighting. So we're all having a match light in our life. And that happened on February 20th. And that's going to unfold over the next 19 years. But more importantly, this year, when we go into the year of the horse, when we get to June, we're going to gallop. We're going to gallop. It's going to be very fast and very speedy. So the idea is, what does your soul want you to do? And so we're all getting new instructions about how our soul is supposed to work for this next 19 years. And we're getting it now. We got a little bit on January 10th last year, but what that set the stage for was, yeah, get ready. We're going to have work to do. But now the work is coming in and it's saying, this is the work you're supposed to do. And again, we go back to those earlier cycles because history and astrology is based on life cycles that we all live. And so this is a big life cycle that you're going to be starting again. And so if we think about what's that chapter look like with Saturn and Neptune meeting at that initiating energy and saying, this is the vision we're going to head towards. This is why it's so important to have a clear vision. Now, A lot of times people are like, I don't really know. I'm like, well, that may be where you are right now. You may not know, but underneath, there's a whisper. And if you're listening to what your soul is whispering in your ear, it's going to say, well, what's the vision? And then we know we're all going to hop on top of that fire horse and we're going to go galloping forward into a whole new chapter of life, a whole new vision of where you're going. So we're just going to spend a minute on draconic, which is a little advanced. Some of you may be like, oh, it's more like there's more charts than just your natal chart. I didn't even know that. I just knew I was a Pisces. The whole world out there with astrology. And when people go to me, astrology, you believe in that? I go, well, right now it's 61 here in Florida. I'm in a sleeveless top. Um, Up in New York, where I'm from, they got a lot of snow, right? So the sun affects what you're wearing or how you're living, right? The moon and affects the growing season. We're blooming. The moon affects the tides, makes the tides go up and down. We know we have full moons and everybody gets a little excited. The doctors know when they're happening. The police know when even the bus drivers in New York City know when the full moon happens because people get a little crazy on that full moon. So all astrology says is the other planets have an impact too. You already agreed to the sun and the moon. It rules the tides, rules the women's lunar cycles. Yeah, we know when it's hot, we wear a coat. When we sweat, we wear a coat when it's cold. So we're already accepting that the planets affect our behavior. Two of them, at least, the sun and moon. So the other guys do too. So when we're looking at the dragon chart or the soul's chart, it originated in Babylonian times and it uses the zodiac where the moon's node is 0. And basically, it expresses your inner maxims, your higher ethics that give you an individual purpose, meaning, and clarity of conviction. So we're having Saturn and Neptune land on your soul's point and say, what's your purpose? What's your meaning? What's your clarity of conviction? Why are you here? And it shows what you're here to do. It expresses the ideas that you're striving to attain. And it shows areas you can grow. It shows areas of taking action. To live this chart to the greatest potential, you cultivate the qualities of the chart. Less helpful can come through, when you get mad and you fight with God because you're all pissed off because of your brother, your sister, your boss, or whatever. This talks to you about like, now really, do you really want to be fighting with them? And the challenge for each of us is to live up to the ideals at a soul level. So this is the United States chart. Like I said, every country has a chart, every document. So this is our Declaration of Independence when the founding fathers were Masons. Masons know astrology. Washington, D.C. is laid out in the Virgo constellation because Virgos are servants. And the idea of government is it's supposed to serve the people, right? So when they wrote the Declaration of Independence, the founding fathers picked a time to sign it. Why did they pick July 4th, 1776 at 5:10 p.m.? Because this chart embodies the Masons' vision. Now, if you go to my website, I have an article on it, which I explain what the Masonic code was, because they were all Masons, and why they picked this chart. So 12 years after the Revolutionary War, Ben Franklin was going through England on his way back from France, where he'd been hanging out with the French court. And he gave this chart to an astrologer named Ebenezer Sibley. So this is called the Sibley chart. And it personifies the Masonic code. Do unto others, be an example for children, take care of your neighbors, be reputable and kind in all manner. It's an interesting code that they live by. And I explain the astrology of it and also what the code is. But basically, this is our chart for our vision. And the Declaration of Independence was written by a bunch of white guys that own land. So it didn't include Black people. It didn't include women. The women have only had the vote for 100 and some odd years, right? And I don't know if you saw the movie Lincoln that Steven Spielberg did with Daniel Day-Lewis. I saw it on the Upper West Side in Manhattan, which is a very liberal part of Manhattan, the Upper West Side. So I'm there in the theater, and they're doing that was about Lincoln getting Congress to pass the 13th and 14th Amendments, which were abolishing slavery and that everyone born in the United States is a citizen. And so I'm in this theater with a bunch of Upper West Siders, and they're passing the amendment to allow Black men to vote and be citizens. At which point, somebody says, "Well, the next thing that's going to happen is you're going to want to give the women the vote." And everybody in Congress on the movie went, "No, no, women shouldn't have the vote." And then all the theater erupted, going, "What do you mean we can't have the vote? What do you mean we can't have the vote?" But again, we've evolved. This was our visionary chart, our vision of the country. And we've evolved from white landowning men to white men to Black men to eventually women. So we've had this evolution over time. It's our vision, it's our goal. And if you read the Declaration of Independence, it's an aspirational document. It says this is our vision of what we're going to do. And that's what this chart embodies if you know astrology. The thing I want to point out to you is remember where the Saturn Neptune is, it's down here at the foundation of the country. So that new energy is down here at the very bottom of our chart, the foundation of our country, the foundation of who we are and what we believe. And then remember where the new moon eclipse was? It's right here at 28, right on our moon. The moon is the public. This is the third house of freedom of speech. This is the house, moon is the public in general. One of the constitutional amendments, Bill of Rights, right to free speech, number one. That guy right there. And so that new moon eclipse that we had on the moon in Aquarius was the right to free speech. So if you've been following politics, I think it was 8 people, the 8 Congress people that said, military, that quoted the military code of justice. They were trying to arrest them for saying that, even though they were reading the code of justice saying you don't have to follow an illegal order. And they just dropped that case because they tried 3 different judges, and then they tried a couple grand juries, and nobody would say, "What do you mean? They were just telling the truth. Why would we indict them for saying don't follow illegal orders?" So that was the eclipse right there on that little moon of ours. So what we look at is the US chart with the draconic chart. We can see the Jupiter over here in Aquarius, that same number. So this eclipse is right on our Jupiter. What are our beliefs about things? Right on the year of the horse. How are we going to, you guys are going to do horse legislation, but as a culture, how are we going to gallop into this new year and go forward and have this vision? We also see the sun here at Pisces, and that's the Statue of Liberty. Give me, you're hungry, you're wretched, you're learning to be free. Come to my country. We will help you. Pisces is the sign of immigrants. Pisces is the sign. Hi, Remo. My cat's coming over to say hi. Come here. Come on up. Here's Remo. You get to see the little black tail there. So then he just changed the screen for me. Thank you very much. So here we see the chart for the Declaration of Independence, and we see its soul's chart right here, that the Venus and the Jupiter on that moon is the heart of our purpose, why we're here, freedom of speech, new ideas. I know, thank you. And here, our Saturn Neptune that we're working on in terms of our vision and our direction is down here on the note of fate, inviting us to have a vision for our country and for a horse legislation and our purpose of what we're here to do, what that looks like, and to not be afraid to say, this is our vision and how we're going to get there. Notice Uranus is in Gemini, which is the planet of change, and Saturn, which is the structure, is sitting right on it, 8 and 8. When the numbers match, it's like they're kissing each other. So those two guys are saying, hey, Gemini, divide and conquer, do part 1, do part 2. It's been passed in one place, we'll go get it passed in the other. This energy of how we connect and relate is really strong in terms of where we're going. When we take the eclipse and we put it against the United States chart, you can see that sun and the moon down here for the eclipse, which is that dragon, that butterfly emerging, which is that vision energy of where are we going in the next chapter, right on the moon. So this is a forward motion. Sorry, the cat's doing a little excitement here. There we go. Thank you, Remo, for helping change my screen. He steps on my keyboard and things change. Um, he has decided he wants a treat. That's why he is here. It is treat time for Remo. Just so you know, I have a cat that is the boss of the house. There was a quote that they were royalty in Egypt, and let me tell you, I live with a king here, right? He's going to be 17 in April, so when he wants his treats, he's very loud and proud. Here we go. So this new moon eclipse, right on our public moon, our right to free press, the right to speak your piece, the right to say what you want to say, and how important that is. And then here, when we do the eclipse against the draconic chart, we can see it's over here in our relationship to the outside world. What is our abundance that we're going to bring to the outside world? What is it that we love, that we want to create? And notice the two Marses are joined here, which are very much about how are we going to speak and go forward. What are we going to take action and do? So the fire horse year really encourages us to step forward in our best mode and say, structurally, what's the structure I want to build? The dream looks like this. And then I have the support of the other planets, the ideas, and the collaboration of the group to get there. When we look at where this eclipse falls, because there's a thing called astrocartography, which says where is it going to activate? Where is the Saturn Neptune point? This one makes me a little nervous because it's running through Greenland, right? And it also is running over here through Iran. So that's what we got to watch as hotspots right now. You know, when we do astrology, one of the things we do is predictive. We look and say, hey, where are we going to go? So the lines go through where action's going to happen. So when we had, it was in Taurus, Taurus is cows. When it was in Taurus, it ran through Ireland and then into England and then into France. And that's when we had mad cow disease, right? So that was cows, Taurus. Now it's in Aries, which is war. And we have that line running through Greenland. And we also have it running through Iran over here. So those are our hot spots for this next chapter. So again, you know, forewarned is forearmed. We also have stuff going over here through Tokyo in the middle of Australia. But the ones that I'm watching are here, and I don't know anybody in Brazil, but Brazil's hot too. We look at Donald Trump as the leader of the country. He has the eclipses landing in his chart too. So they're over here in his house of health. And they go back to September, where there was the companion eclipses, which were over Labor Day. And that was when everybody's going, where is he? Where is he? We haven't seen him. Where is he? So we're going to watch his health under this eclipse. Now, what happens with eclipses, they unfold over a period of time, you know, when planets come to trigger them. So when the World Trade Center happened, the eclipse that happened in June was on the US stuff, and the astrologers wrote, things are going to happen in the United States. When Mercury got there, Mercury's documents, in August, there was a note given to George Bush in his ranch in Texas, Osama bin Laden's going to attack with planes. When Mars got there, Mars is war in action. When Mars got there, September 9th, that was when they came in through Maine to do the attack on the Trade Center. So we're going to watch Donald's chart over this next few months as planets get to 28, because it's opposite his ascendant, which is him, and it's in his health house, and it's opposite his Mars, which is Leo, his heart. And, you know, part of the swollen ankles, I have relatives that have had some congestive heart failure. That's kind of a sign of heart problems. And so we'll kind of watch his chart for health matters coming in, and we see Uranus up here, and Donald is born as a Sun Uranus, so he is here to create change. Uranus can be chaos, but he also has Jupiter over here. You see the little S? Jupiter's stopped in the sky at 17, and it's trine his Uranus. So that's why he's so lucky, because he's got Jupiter, the planet of the gods, trine his Uranus at 17. So we see he's a very lucky man. Then we look at J.D. Vance's chart. He's got the same angles as Donald. So the sun here for him is in the seventh too. Eclipses mean to leave, but they also mean to rise up. So if you rise up, you know, you're the actor, falls and breaks a leg, and the ingenue gets to take over and go on stage. So we see J.D. Vance's chart is very activated by this eclipse too. So the book that I talked about was The Lost Timing of Eclipses, which was that were those node phases. And then also on the draconic chart, if you've never heard about it, these are places you can go to get more information. And I do Patreon, I do a daily theme song and aspects every day. And there is my favorite image, Earth rising as shot from the moon. So questions, comments, concerns, people have some ideas they want to share. We're going to open it up and kind of talk about the vision. Also, there's another astrologer named Ronnie Dreyer, Dreyer. Ronnie, Ronnie, and she does a really good newsletter, and she tells you when the eclipses are going to be activated. On the side of her newsletter every month, she says, this is what eclipses are going to be activated. And so you know when they're going to be activated, like the presidential daily briefing and the Mars on the eclipse from 9/11 or 2001. So eclipses are big because they kind of bring world events forward. And of course, if you notice, Donald has the moon, the public, the moon in the United States chart is on his descendant. Same with JD Vance's. So that's why the public connects to them or attaches to them. Because when planets are on the same degree, it's kind of like a little marriage or a partnership. So questions, comments, concerns,
Thank
forward.
you. Thank you, Anne. So I think that I mean one one really big theme is change, right? So
Change.
nothing's going to stay the same.
No,
Um,
all different.
and I think that that means that our approach needs to be different also.
Hmm.
So if we've done the same things over and over again, we
Hmm.
just need to find new ways to do it. Like I know one thing people are upset about, and I talked to you briefly, there's a SAFE Act, to stop slaughtering wild horses. And people are really upset because they were hoping that it would get put into with the farm bill, and it
Right.
didn't. But I think that from what you were saying, it may be a better thing for it to have standalone legislation because it'll be
Hmm.
that fireplace, right? And it'll be
Right.
something lasting then.
Yeah, and it also is sustainable for 19 years. When it's in a temporary thing, it can be repealed. When it's your own act, it very much may be your own vision of how to do it. Yes. And also because one of the things that's happening with Saturn and Neptune on the IC of the US chart, it's saying what's the structure of the country going to be? Remember when we had it in Capricorn, it was the Berlin Wall fell, poof, the world changed. We may break up as a country because we stayed together after the Civil War, but we're back at those energies again. And we may be like, yeah, I don't know that we're going to stick together. The federal government doesn't support us. I would also look at doing legislation on a state level. You and I talked a little bit about that, but I would say, what's the state level? What's the federal level? Because if we do break up, or if they do say, hey, we don't really care about horses, what is it we care about? So it's kind of having your vision of how you're going to navigate. Because remember, with Uranus, it's got a divorce energy or a breakup energy. So if we break up, what happens to the federal lands? What happens, because as the government goes less, the idea of the federal government is it's supposed to supply us with services. The government's for the people. But as they stop FEMA, they stop supplying us with education, they stop the SNAP benefits, they cut the health insurance. Are we going to stay together? Are we going to break up into red and blue in Texas? Nothing says we have to stay united. So the idea is, what's your vision if we stay united? What's your vision if we break up? Because you have lots of lands there that are, if the federal parks turn into state parks, what's your vision? And you think about the legislation that got passed when they took back abortion rights. A lot of states had passed laws that went into effect immediately because the federal government said we're going to turn it over to the states. So I would probably pursue a two-path solution. I would do state level and federal, and then do standalone because it's there. You can vote for it or not. You're going to vote to kill the horses, you know, and people don't want to, you get all the animal people out when that happens. When the animal people really show up. There was one time I was doing a new moon column and it was a red hawk flying around in the sky, one of the images. And in New York, we had a hawk named Redtail, and he had a girlfriend, he had a wife named Lola. I'm not going to make her a girlfriend because she made babies with him. And they had a really nice build. They had a really nice nest on Joan London, remember the talk show host from one of the morning shows, on her building. Now they're hawks. They go get the pigeons, they bring them back, they feed the babies, and when they're done, they throw the hawk out, the pigeon out of the nest, and it lands on the sidewalk in front of Fifth Avenue. As you're walking along, a dead pigeon comes and lands in front of you. So they decided, this building decided, the guy that was running it, her husband was the co-op board president, decides they're going to evict the hawks. They had protests outside, chanting and screaming. They had a hawk video watcher across the street. Come and watch Lola and Redtail raise their babies because they're trying to evict them from this co-op on Fifth Avenue. The hue and cry was crazy. So it might make sense, rather than putting it in the farm bill, to have it be its own legislation where up or down, yay, no, go for it. Because that does seem to be a lot of the legislation that's passing, such as the Jeffrey Epstein stuff. It's a standalone bill. It wasn't tied to anything else. And it allows you to gather people to fight for things that they believe in. And people, when you go, what are you going to kill the horses? Can't kill the horses. You're going to get, I think, more reaction than kind of tucking it in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and the legislation that's proposed has gotten more and more sponsors and co-sponsors. So there are a lot of people that support it. So I think
Yes.
it's just a matter of trying to get it to a floor vote, which I think
Yeah.
is a whole
Which is
nother mess in
definitely
our
doable.
Congress.
The Democrats have been doing it all over the place. They did it with a bunch of things, right? So, I mean, they have that new way where they put it in the little thing and it sits there and it cooks and then it pops out and they have to vote on it. And Mike Johnson hates it, but he has to bring it to the floor. So get people to do it. Because that kind of thing, is one of those things. People love their animals. It's an election year. Nobody wants to vote against the horses running on the plains. So I would try that.
That
Because
makes sense.
Jupiter's going into the year of the fire horse. So I would be like, this is when the horse legislation should pass, you know. That
Does anybody else have any
remember the
questions?
independent, the courageous, remember the attributes, right? Like if we go back to here, the attributes of the horse. One more. There we go. Transformation, charisma, unpredictable, individual. We have an individual bill, unafraid to challenge norms, trailblazers. Hey, one bill that everybody can agree on. The horses should be protected. Nobody wants to take on the animal people. They write letters, you know. That makes sense?
Yes, it does. If anyone
Refusing to
has
be
any
bound by
questions,
convention.
put them
Yeah.
into the
Anybody have
chat.
questions on anything? Feel free or unmute yourself and pipe up. I like the name Mustang Mini. That's very cute. Nobody?
No, but I think it was really great information. We talked about during a summit that we had that the last really major thing that happened for wild horses was in 1971 when they passed the Wild and Free Roaming Wild Horse and Burro Act.
Mhm.
And I talked about that probably was being
Started in the
birthed
year of the
during
horse.
the year of the fire horse in 66. So
Mhm,
um,
mhm,
I think it's a good time for us. It's a good time to just take advantage of this energy and move forward.
mhm.
Um, and you did put how people can get a hold of you if they
Yep.
want it, it's
At the back.
anneortlee.com.
Anortlee.com. Yeah. Mhm.
So hopefully you guys found this helpful and interesting. It was a lot of information, but it was a lot of really good information. And I think everything's pointing towards change and new ways of doing things. And I think that's what we need to look at.
And that's through all the world. So this, when you're talking to your family, your friends, and they're feeling stressed, you say, well, what's your vision for the future? Get them thinking visionary, get them thinking ideas of what they want. And they may initially be like, well, I don't want that anymore. You go, okay, well, what's the positive of that? You don't say you don't want to date somebody cheap. You say you want to date somebody generous. Like, what's the positive vision, you know? So that's the vision, the idea, the vision, and then the reality train. The vision lays the track for the train to follow on. It's a visionary time. And think about what happened in 1966 and the vision. I mean, there were the assassinations, there were the changes that we had, but they led us to a new place. People protesting, people saying, "Hey, this is not how I want the world to be. We need to change the vision." And that's what we're having this year. And it's all across the world. It's not just in the United States, it's everywhere. And
Mm.
the other part is these planets, none of us have lived through these energies. 19, none of us were, I don't think, were alive in 1941. Those old guys on the State of the Union last night were, none of us were alive in 1861, and none of us were alive in 1777. But we have history, we have ideas to remind us of what the vision were that people had and what they fought for and what they believed in. And then that's what we've been living with. So now we have the new vision that we get to bring as citizens of this country and people that believe in why we're here. We all have a purpose, we all have a reason. Your chart says why you're here and what your vision is. And you're in it because you're part of this group. You have a vision of working in community to create something, and that's what we're going to be doing for the next 35 years. So it's big time.
I wanted to say, and I thought about this would have been something to talk about at the beginning, like
Mhm.
why astrology? I don't know if you want to just talk about for a quick minute.
Mhm.
Astrology used to be, kings and world leaders used to always go to the astrologers. Like you said, the Masons with planning the Declaration of Independence. This is how we plan things out and how we know what's going to happen and when the best time is to do things.
And people still use astrology. Most people think of Reagan as being a very successful president. He had an astrologer. And he actually said to Nancy, honey, I forgot to duck, because he would say to her, what does Joan say? Joan Quigley was his astrologer. And Joan would say, this is a good time to do it. So a lot of the legislation, the Mr. Gorbachev tear down this wall, the moments that happened. So many, many people use astrology. You'd be surprised who I have as clients, who other astrologers have as clients. And it still is very much used by financial people, by a lot of people don't talk about it, but they use it. And so there is more and more of it with Pluto and Aquarius for the next 20 years. We'll be hearing more about astrology. But as a historical purpose, you would say, this isn't a good time to go to war. You would look at it, back in the days when dysentery and cholera took babies, you would cast a chart to see if a baby would live. And you would say, hey, this kid's probably going to die before it's two, just because the water was dirty or they were going to get an illness, and go make more babies, or this is how this is going to turn out. So there's a long and storied history. Many popes were astrologers. The largest collection of astrology literature is in the Vatican. So lots and lots of people were astrologers, and it used to be very recognized. And then once we realized the Earth revolved around the sun, people got mad. But there's a kind of astrology called heliocentric, which is what they use for the stock market and they use for weather prediction. So this is geocentric, which is our perspective on Earth. But also when you're looking at like a Vedic astrologer, they use sidereal heliocentric because they look at it as, what is your soul here to do and why did you come in doing this? And in their culture, astrology is a religion. So you reincarnated with this journey, and because you were a bad dude or a good dude in the last life, this is your karma in this life. So every culture has astrology. We got decimated a little bit by the Catholic Church when they said, don't do it for predictive because you're fighting with God, but keep the medicine, keep the agriculture. And so every degree in a chart has a body part. So when someone's sick, I can look at their chart and see, oh, this is what is going on with your duodenum. I had just somebody earlier today, I said, well, oh my God, that's where I've been having all my IBS. It's like, okay. So the body parts are all in there. And Hippocrates said, if you're a bad astrologer, you're a bad doctor. So it's got a very luminous past. It's not just your sun sign column. But, it's a new language. You got to learn it. And once you learn it, you go, wow, this is really cool. Now, of course, was raised, you know, I had a life-altering event, and the women I ran into after it said, you should go see an astrologer. I'm like, why? Why would I do that? And they were like, well, because you're at this turning point. You're at a transitional point. So I'm like, all right, I'll try it. I'll try stuff. and the guy knew all this stuff about my ex. And he's like, and didn't he have a mother story? And didn't you break up with him 7 years ago? And he went through all this. And I was like, how does he know all this stuff with looking at a book of numbers? Like, how does he know that? And so my friend, I said that to her, and she goes, well, he teaches it. I said, I'm going to learn how to do that because I hate to make the same mistake twice. So I started studying astrology like a few months later with him in the fall. He had a beginner class, and I was about 2 months into it, and I was like, wow, this is our user manual. This tells us who we are and why we're here. It'd be very helpful. Like if parents knew this is how you can help your kid when they're having a hard time by helping them work with their energy. And then a few years later, when I decided to be an astrologer, my father was like, I want my college tuition money back. And I was like, Dad, you paid it to the college, not me. Go hit them up. But St. Bonaventure, which is where I went to college, and St. Francis, they both were astrologers. Brother, Sun, Sister, Moon, the Canticle of the Lights, which was one of St. Francis's famous poems. Yeah, so astrology's around, been around for centuries, and keeping track of the lunations, the high tides, the low tides. They take the boats in and out of the water on the equinoxes because that's when the tides are highest and lowest. So when you go to Gloucester, they take the boats out on those equinoxes. They put them back in on the equinoxes. It's kind of cool stuff.
The other
And always something new and fun to learn. So that's cool too. Yeah.
the other thing, and I know that you're a fan too of Heather Cox Richardson.
Yes,
Um,
I love Heather. Yeah.
she says all the time now that like we'll never go back to January 19th, 2025. We need to start looking at, that's who we were, but now what do we want to be and what do we want to rebuild our country as and everything as? And I think that that's like kind of a good summary of what you've said here today, right?
Yeah.
Everything's changing. We need to have the vision and the drive and pushing for what it is we want to change and how we want those changes to happen.
Right. And if we think of the leaders, like when I go to bed at night, I am totally not a Trump fan at all. I mean, I moved to New York in 76 when I got out of school. So he was a feature of New York, as a guy, as a real estate guy. So I was never impressed with the man. But I go to bed at night and I say to him, Donald, I'm sending you a little love, sending you a little love because I know you never got enough as a kid. And I want to thank you for all that you've shown us about what we need to change, what you brought to light for us to see. Because his sun in Uranus is on the United States, Mars, and Gemini. Founding fathers picked a weak Mars in a crappy house so our enemies wouldn't be strong. And Donald's light and Uranus are both on that, cracking us open and having us see things. And I know all the time in the first term, I kept going, I thought there was a law against that. Nope, it was just an assumption. No law, no law. It's just an assumption. So I thank him and I say, you did a great job. You showed us what we needed to see. You can go anytime now. Thanks for letting us see it. Thanks so much. Bye-bye. Because the idea of waking up and seeing things we never saw before, that is what he has done. He has illuminated for us things that none of us knew about, good or bad or indifferent, however you feel about him. He had us see things, and that was his job as a chaos agent, as a sun Uranus guy, as an awakener. He awakened all of us, good, bad, or indifferent. So Uranus is the planet of awakening, and Donald Trump is a sun Uranus person. So he sees it and he goes, okay, how can I twist this, change it, break it apart, break it into symptom pieces, do something different that you didn't anticipate I would do. Now he gets a little predictable after a time, but that Sun Uranus on our Mars showed us things we needed to see. And that's the most important thing. So to Heather Cox Richardson's point, we're not going back. We never go back. We go forward with the new knowledge we've gained and we learn how to work with it in a different way. And so this energy with the Sun Uranus in Gemini is like, okay, what's our vision of where we're headed? Because that's the most important thing. Where are we headed? What's our vision? And everybody's getting a new vision. Every country in the world's getting a new vision. Europe's looking at the United States and going, we've been friends for 80 years. And I go, 84, because it's the Uranus return. And they're like, but you're being mean to us, Canada, well, we're the middle people. We're not powerful, but we can gang together as a bunch of middle people. Everybody's getting a new vision of how they want to work in the world. And that's what we all need to do because that's the mandate that the skies are bringing us. They're saying everything is changing. What is your vision? Why are you here? What are you here to do? And if we do it that way, it's a lot less scary than the world is friggin' chaos and we're falling apart. Because when we go from earth and water into fire and air, think about the shift. Like you're sitting on the earth, you got a hang glider, and you're going to jump off into the air and fly with those little wings. I would never do it, but lots of people do it. They jump off the cliff with the wings on, right? That's jumping into the air. Or you're coming out of the water and you're walking on the hot sand of the beach and your feet are a little burning because the sand is hot and you run forward. Or you're sitting by a big bonfire after emerging from the water, from the swamp. And that bonfire hit warms your face, but the back is a little chilly, right? So think of the differences in the energy of fire and air, earth and water. Earth and water is sustaining and solid and does not change, unpredictable. As it doesn't bounce around and do stuff. It's like it's very much going to be doing what it's doing. Fire and air is unpredictable. And so that's where it can be a little chaotic for people because they're like, it feels like everything's out of control. And like, well, it is. So what's your vision? Where do you want the control? Where do you want to build your structure? Where are you going to put your stake in the ground and say, this is what I am going to do. That's where we are. We're in the I am energy. And the more we get comfortable with that, the better, because looking around, well, I'm going to do this. You want to come with me? Yeah, that sounds great. Then you get your little group together, Aquarius, my people. We all have a shared vision and we can work on building the vision because we have that. And it's happening all over the world in everybody's chart. So it's everybody's job to have their vision and not be afraid of the changes. Changes happen. Fire changes things. Air changes things. Think of a tornado. Think of a gentle breeze. Think of a hurricane. Think of fire like a nice little fire in the fireplace as opposed to a raging forest fire like we saw in California when those houses all burned. And everybody was like, well, and like they were 100-mile-an-hour winds. There's no way a helicopter can fly over 100-mile-an-hour wind and drop water on it. Think of how the sparks are flying because of the 100-mile-an-hour wind. The wind is the air and the fire sparks were everywhere. And so all those fires took off, right? And so we're in a very impassioned, fiery time, which then we go back to, okay, let me regulate myself. Let me have acupuncture. Let me do movement without overexertion. Let me give my cardiac system some help. Let me eat good foods that make me feel good. Let me do emotional processing so I don't feel suppressed. Let me go to bed and get a good night's sleep. These are all good ways of stabilizing your life from this fiery energy. Intentional regulation, it's a high yang year. It's how do we ground that energy, build that little fire that's sustaining us and helping us go. Make
And
sense?
yes, and I think that like for the sense of community that you're talking about, that Aquarius energy,
Yeah.
I think that what's happening in Minnesota is a perfect example of that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Where they one stood up against what was happening, and two, how that whole entire community has come together in ways that, like, I don't even think that all of us are aware, from helping
Mm-hmm.
people when they're coming out of the ice buildings and giving them clothing and rides, and helping women who are having babies and helping get kids to school. I mean, like the sense of community there. And that's something I think that you're saying will be applied in communities,
Everywhere.
whether it's horse
Everywhere.
advocacy
Yeah.
or our small cities or our countries. So,
Right. Everywhere. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's the idea is once you know that that's possible, and I remember somebody was saying to me, Napoleon and Hitler, a lot of trouble when they invaded a winter people during a winter. So you watch them out there in that 10-degree business. I'm like, oh my God. And then you watch them reacting, going, what are you doing to my community? No, no, these are my people. This is my neighbors. So Pluto in Aquarius ignites that sense of community. Who are our people? And you're my neighbor, I'm going to help you. I'm going to help. You can't come after me. You can't hurt them without me standing up for them. But that whole energy, one of my friends lived in Long Island, and there were German people there after the Holocaust. And they said, we knew what was going on, but we didn't stop it because we were afraid of the thugs. They would come and firebomb you at night. So the whole idea is there's more of us than them. And as we work in community, that community unites and helps us get there. And if you watched a few years back when they were doing this stuff for the first responders for 9/11, and Jon Stewart got involved, and he went down to Congress, and he was protesting on the street, in front of the building. And he got those votes. He got the community together. He was organizing the police and the fire first responders who were dropping dead from having breathed in all the crap in the air from 9/11 because it was full of asbestos and plastics and body parts and whatever you breathed in. It was very toxic air. And more of them have died. More of the first responders have died than the people who died in 9/11. And he was like, I'm getting this legislation passed. And he was down there rallying the troops, and he got it passed. So you forget how powerful we are as a group, as a community, and the whole idea of the Declaration, we say we have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and the government should work for the people. We shouldn't be afraid of our government. It should respect what we want and go for it. And it's changed. It's gotten corrupted. It's been 250 years. Time for a paint job and maybe some new wood. But the idea is now that we see what needs to happen, let's go do it. And that's why we're here. You didn't die. You're still here. So you're here. You got something to do. That's the way. That's my Virgo talking. You got Saturn in there. You got work to do somewhere in your chart because you're still in this lifetime. So what is the thing that inspires you, that makes your heart passionate, that makes you say, yes, I believe in this and I'm willing to fight for it. I'm willing to be a knight of the round table and gallop in chivalrously and say, how can I help? And that's what we saw in Minnesota, people acting chivalrously towards their neighbors and saying, we want to help you. We're not, we want to create for our community. We believe in our community. We want to create and have it grow and have it be supportive of us and our people and our families and our children, why we're here. Whatsoever you do to the least of your brothers, that you do to me, It's kind of
Very
wild.
awesome. Very
Mhm.
awesome, man. Thank you very much. And
You're
thank you
welcome.
everyone for being here and and thank you for giving us some tools to use to go forward in this year of the
Mhm.
fire horse.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So this sounds encouraging for the horses as Chris continues to encourage the many and save them. Truly interesting, although overwhelming. All new information. That's always good on this. Thank you for the horse advocates, and interesting and fascinating, all the historical. Yeah. And Pope Leo, right? Pope Leo, the first Catholic Pope, named himself after Pope Leo, who was 1860, and he was a Pope that did workers' rights. And so now we have another Pope Leo doing, hey, let's do workers' rights. Let's help the workers. So yeah, it's universal. That's the beauty of astrology. There's a great book called Cosmos and Psyche. And in it, Richard Tarnas lays out the astrology of the big picture, these planets we were talking about, the background planets, and how they shift and change cultural assumptions. So we're entering this new fiery visionary cultural assumption opportunity for the next 30 years. And sometimes we go backwards. We're not always forward going, but sometimes we have a moment where we go, "Oh, that's what we're doing? Got it. I'm in." And that's what I want everybody to go away from this is, "Oh, that's what we're doing? Got it. My posture on that is this. I'm out, I'm for it, I'm not for it. I appreciate your right to do it, but I'm going to go the other way because I don't think that's a good idea, but I'm going to go with my opinion, with my vision, with my ideas, and I'm going to work towards making them happen." And as that fire horse gallops through your chart this summer through December, you're going to feel the horse galloping over every planet in your chart, waking it up. and having it go, oh, wow. Oh, wow. Think about the first time you rode a horse, the first time you saw one galloping and you saw that freedom and that sense of power and the sense of dignity and majesty of a horse. That's what this year is about for all of us to emulate. It's going to be a fun year.
Well, thank you again. I
You're welcome.
appreciate it and thank all you guys for being here.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.